Hello and welcome to my Spear class guide, or otherwise Cloud Piercer class guide for Wuchang Fallen Feathers. A very powerful weapon that when used correctly and when built correctly can do a pretty insane amount of damage. I was actually able to do up to 1,000 plus damage per hit, which was actually able to one-shot most of the regular enemies that I came across and actually did big damage against bosses, made them go down quite quickly. Very, very powerful weapon. However, it is going to be a spear, so it is going to be a little bit on the slower side in terms of its attack pattern, so you're going to have to learn your timings correctly. But once you do end up getting correctly, this weapon is going to absolutely melt enemies, and it's going to be an incredibly good weapon, especially when it comes to minions, since this can pretty much one-shot most of the smaller minions you're going to come across. So without further ado, let's talk about this weapon, where you can find it, how you can get it, what it's going to all be about. Now, you're going to be able to find the Cloud Piercer at the Zenwu Temple. This is going to be the sunset section of the game, where you see that sunset palace or temple. It is going to be found in one of those temples, so you're going to have a look around, but you will be able to pick it up there, and it is going to be just pretty much lying on the floor. This weapon is going to come with some very unique features, such as an explosive like gun at the end of it. So if you do end up using the disciplines, which I would highly recommend when it comes to this build, because this build is going to make use of disciplines quite extensively, since you are going to get a lot of bonuses for when you use disciplines. And this is going to be one of the few weapons that I actually use disciplines quite frequently, since most of the weapons I actually found myself not using their disciplines that much, whereas with this weapon you're definitely going to want to spam them, since it is going to be a very important aspect of this weapon. But I'll discuss why when we look at the skill tree. So without further ado, let's talk about the skill tree and how this class is built. Now obviously I have quite a few perks here, so if you're still in the earlier stages of the game, you won't be able to build as you see here. However, I will talk about which way you should start things out and how you should go once you get to the later stage of the game. So first things first, you're obviously going to level up the spear side of the skill tree, which you're going to find here at the bottom right. It's important to note this weapon is going to have scaling with strength and agility. It's going to be agility 2 and strength 5. So you're going to want to put as much points as you can into strength and agility. More so strength, since it's strength 5, so it's going to scale better with strength. But if you do come across some agility nodes on the way, you definitely want to pick up those as well. But strength is going to be your priority, since that is going to increase your weapon damage whenever you level up strength, as well as obviously agility. So first of all, we're going to be picking up the skill, which is going to be the boldheart. This one you're going to pick up because you just kind of have to. And this one is going to enable one of the unique mechanics when it comes to the spear. And what that's going to allow you to do is when you do end up doing spear light attacks, heavy attacks, and dash attacks, the final strike of the spear attack is going to grant boldheart. And what boldheart is going to essentially do, you're going to see at the bottom left hand corner of the screen, you're going to see a spear icon. When you do these regular attacks, you're going to start accumulating boldheart, and that is going to allow you to essentially, when you do end up using your disciplines, it's going to convert those boldheart points into skyborn might. Now, if you don't know what skyborn might is basically this game's version of mana. That is the substance you're going to need in order to unlock your special attacks, or your better versions of your special attacks, or otherwise disciplines. So you're going to want to stack those whenever you can, and this is going to be how you're going to be able to accumulate them very easily and very quickly. So then the next thing we're going to be leveling up towards is going to be the emboldening spear. What this is going to do is going to spear weapon and discipline skills convert your boldheart stacks into skyborn might. It's going to be for every 2 stacks of boldheart, it will convert into 1 skyborn might. That sounds very confusing, but essentially what that means is when you do end up using your disciplines, it's going to convert whatever boldheart stacks you have into skyborn might at a rate of 2 to 1. So if you have 4 boldhearts and you do a discipline and the discipline hits the enemy, it will then convert that 4 boldheart into 2 skyborn might. If you have 2 boldhearts when you do end up attacking with your discipline, it will convert them to 1 skyborn might. Now the boldheart can stack up to 10 times, so if you do end up landing 10 attacks, you can go up all the way to 10, and when you do end up using a discipline, then you will get 5 skyborn might, which means you can basically maximum fill your skyborn might in 1 hit, so long as you have enough boldheart. That's what this weapon is going to be all about, is basically converting your boldheart into skyborn might. So we're going to obviously be picking up a bunch of the strength nodes on the way. I would recommend you start leveling up the right hand side of this node first, since this is going to be where the strength icons are mostly stacked, and since strength is more valuable than agility, it makes more sense to go down the right hand path first. But it is obviously going to, at some point, you're going to come down to the left hand side and pick up some of those agility nodes, since they are going to be convenient. And since you do want to make sure you pick up that strong blade, which is going to be this weapon's mastery, every weapon is going to have the strong blade stat, and when you do end up leveling it up, you are going to drastically increase the power of weapons, so you definitely going to want to pick up those whenever possible. However, you are going to need other currencies in order to upgrade these, so you won't be able to pick them up, all of them at least not immediately, but whenever you can, obviously you want to pick these up and make sure you do actively seek those out. Try get all of them in this node because that's going to be very, very important. Then moving on now, we're going to be picking up the penetrating point, and what that is going to do is the final attack of the spear light attack combo will grant 1 skyborn might, and that's just going to obviously give you a bit more skyborn might going forward, which is obviously going to be quite nice. We're also going to work our way down to pick up the perk Wind Force, and what this is going to do is you can consume 1 stack of skyborn might to quickly strike with a charged heavy spear attack. So the heavy spear attack, like all attacks, are going to be fairly slow, but if you do have a skyborn might when you do end up using it, you will consume 1 skyborn might and you'll be able to do that heavy attack a lot faster, which is quite nice because if you do end up using these heavy attacks and you hit the enemies in the back, you will typically stun them even if they're bosses. Obviously the smaller bosses, not the big ones. The big ones, they don't get stunned as easily, but if it's like a humanoid shaped boss and you do end up doing a heavy attack on their back, you will typically end up stunning them, which can be very, very valuable. So make sure you pick up that to make you able to do faster heavy attacks. Otherwise, this weapon, now the way we built this class is we're going to be using this as a discipline class. So we're going to be using some benedictions that are going to require disciplines. Now the thing is, in order to get the most out of this, you're going to want to pick up 9 disciplines. Now that's going to be very difficult to do in the early stages of the game. So if you don't have that many perk slots, you can kind of ignore all these disciplines. You're only going to really need to pick up 1 of them. But if you are going for a more late game build and you do have enough perks, then you want to start picking up all these disciplines in order to make the use of those benedictions. However, if you are, like I said, in the earlier stage of the game, it's going to be very impractical to try pick up all these disciplines. So don't worry about picking these disciplines up. The one that I do like to use, however, is Solar Leap. You're going to want to pick up probably 1 of these. Solar Leap is the one that I like to use. This one is going to allow you to leap forward with a great force to strike fierce blow, and this is going to convert your bold heart stacks into skyborn might, like all the disciplines are essentially going to do. Now what I really like about this discipline, the Solar Leap, is you can kind of bridge the gap. A lot of enemies are going to kind of attack you, then run away, then attack you, and when you do end up having the Solar Leap, you can lunge towards them and kind of make up that gap very easily. And because this discipline is also going to trigger your bold heart conversion to skyborn might, it means that when you do end up using this attack, you will be able to get more skyborn might, which means you'll be able to use this attack again, and you can kind of loop this around for quite a bit. I mean, you can do this attack several times before you end up running out of skyborn might, which is actually very, very nice. I found this very useful against some of the bosses that end up, you know, they're very annoying. Sometimes they kind of just dive on you, do some damage, then jump back, put some distance, and you have to kind of chase them down. Whereas if you have Solar Leap, you can very easily bridge that gap, jump towards them, and do some extra damage continuously, since this is going to give you more and more skyborn might thanks to your bold heart mechanic, which is going to convert that into extra skyborn might, allowing you to just loop this attack over and over. Now you're also going to probably want to upgrade this to Solar Leap variant 1 and 2. This is just going to make you able to upgrade this discipline so that you end up being able to chain light attacks after you do end up using this discipline if you want to, but you can also just pick those up on the way. Now if you are in the later stage of the game, you're going to want to pretty much pick up all these disciplines. You're not going to end up using them, but you are going to want to pick up all the disciplines here. Spear Veil, you're going to want to pick up. Upward Force, you're going to want to pick up. You can use them if you want to. This is just a personal preference thing. You could use Furious Stab if you want to, but just make sure you pick them up, and that is going to allow you to get the most out of your benedictions. Now, before you get too carried away and level up everything on the spear side things, you're also going to want to improve your survivability. So you're probably going to want to simultaneously also level up the left-hand side of your skill tree, where you're going to find most of the mana capacities and mana potency upgrades, and this is going to allow you to have more potions, because when you start the game, you're going to have very few potions, and it's going to be quite important to make sure you level that up. Otherwise, you are going to have a difficult time when it comes to survivability. You're also going to be able to upgrade your skyborn might, so you can have more than 1 stack, because when you start out, you only can have 1 skyborn might at a time. However, when you do end up upgrading to skyborn core 1 and 2 and 3 and whatever, you will be able to improve your skyborn might so that you can end up having more stacks of it, which means you'll also be able to unlock your better attacks when it comes to your spear, and that is obviously going to be quite nice. Speaking of the spear and skyborn might, you will notice the spear will be able to do a kind of like a gun attack where it explodes. Now the explosion is only going to be available when you do have enough skyborn might, so you have to first stack skyborn might in order to get the explosion effect off of the spear. However, if you do end up pressing L1, which is the light attack, you can still do this attack, but it won't detonate, and that won't knock enemies down. This attack can also stun enemies, so if you do end up hitting them from behind, just like a heavy attack, it will give you a window where you can end up doing like a finishing move on them. So it can be quite nice also against bosses, since it's a little bit quicker to do than a heavy attack actually. So it can be quite nice when you do end up having skyborn might to spend it on this. Otherwise, you can of course just use it on the lunging attack and also just bridge some gaps between enemies with that. Then moving on further left here, we're going to want to be moving up to Rapid Temperance. Now the reason why we want to move up to Rapid Temperance is because we're also going to want to divert left to pick up the Bone Needle Poise Break. Since this weapon is going to be compatible with the Bone Needle Poise Break, you're going to want to pick this up. I'll talk more about it later on when we get to the Temperance, but for now, just pick this up when it is convenient to do so. It's not very important to do. You can leave this till much later on, but if you do want to make the most out of this weapon, you're going to want to combine it with the Bone Needle Poise Break, since that is going to be compatible with this weapon. Otherwise, you can continuously keep moving on left here and just pick up some more mana capacities and mana potency upgrades whenever you feel like you need more potions. And you can just basically move all the way to the far left of the side of the skill tree, and you can pick up the last couple of mana potency and mana capacity upgrades. But just make sure that you are balancing this tree with your spear tree when you start things out, because the one tree is going to obviously increase your damage when it comes to the spear, whereas the other tree is going to increase your survivability with more mana potions and mana upgrades, as well as some other cool little features on the way too. So if you are now reaching the later stages of the game and you do have extra perks and you don't know what to do with them, the next skill tree I will start leveling up is actually going to be the longsword skill tree. And the reason why I like to level up the longsword skill tree as well is because you will notice there are a lot of strength nodes, and they are going to be found fairly early on, so you can access those to get a lot more strength, upgrade them, and you can also pick up obviously some stamina and maybe vitality nodes on the way. If you feel like you need more health, obviously pick up some health nodes. If you feel like you're running out of stamina too often, pick up the stamina nodes. You can also pick up some agility nodes as well here, since agility is also going to improve your damage as well with this weapon. And that's pretty much going to be it when it comes to leveling up the skill nodes of this weapon. If you really reach far into late game, you can start leveling up a bit into the axe category, since the axe also has some useful nodes, but that is only way late in the game that you're going to have enough skill points to do that, so I wouldn't worry about that for the time being. Now let's talk about Temperance, since we did mention this earlier. When it comes to the Bone Needle, the Bone Needle we're making use of is going to be the Bone Needle Poise Break. We've already discussed that. You're going to be able to put that in the first slot of the arm. Then if you want to unlock the other acupoints or the other slots where you can put Bone Needles, you're going to need to level this up on the left-hand side of the skill tree. And that's going to give you some more acupoint slots to put these stones in. Now these stones are going to basically allow you to improve other stats. We're going to be making use of the Gleaming Stone Needle Strength. This is going to be allowing us to moderately increase the strength control of the weapon, which is going to of course increase our damage. We're also making use of the Gleaming Stone Needle Agility. This is going to allow us to also moderately increase the agility control weapon, which is also going to increase our damage. And then we're also making use of the Shadow Stone Needle Agility, which is going to allow us to slightly increase the agility control of the weapon. And that is all combined going to obviously give us just a little bit more damage, which is obviously going to be valuable in this weapon. Now let's talk about the disciplines again, because this is pretty much where the Benedictions come from. Now there are two ways to use this weapon. One is going to be more of a late game way, and one is going to be more of an early game thing. Now if you are in the late stages of the game and you do end up having all those disciplines like I spoke about, now you're going to want to pick up 9 of them. Now if you want to go for this build where you do end up making use of disciplines to increase your damage, this is why I said you're going to want to pick up every discipline in the spear tree. You're also going to need to pick up a couple in the longsword skill tree. I did end up picking 2 of the disciplines in the longsword skill tree, and that is going to allow me to have enough disciplines in order to get the most out of these Benedictions. And what this is going to do is the way Tri-Disciplinary Force is going to increase the damage dealt if 3 discipline skills are known. Then you get the Memory Way 6 Disciplinary Force. This is going to increase damage dealt if 6 of these skills are known. And then we're going to have the same thing, which is going to allow us to get more damage if 9 skills are known. So as you can see here, since we did end up learning 9 disciplines, 2 on the long swords and the rest all going to be on the spear, we are going to do the max amount of damage we can with all of these Benedictories. Now this is going to be quite difficult to obtain if you are in the early stage of the game. If you don't have all those disciplines and you want to go for a more early game version, I like to make use of the Benedictions. That is going to improve the backstab potential of the weapon. I also like to combine this with the other Benediction that is going to allow us to end up getting a little bit of healing when we do end up attacking enemies from behind, so more backstab potential. And then the last Benediction you can use, which is going to increase the damage dealt for every successive hit that you end up doing. So the more damage you end up doing, the stronger your attacks are going to get. That's more of an all-rounder set of Benedictions. You can't really go wrong with that. However, if when you do end up reaching the late stage of the game, you can combine all these Benedictions together to get quite a big amount of increased damage when you end up making use of all 3 of these disciplined Benedictions. Now, in terms of what pendants I like to make use of, I also like to make use of the Jade Pendant, which is going to increase your weapon's stab attack power. Since this weapon is a spear, obviously all your attacks are pretty much going to be stabs, so it's going to increase your damage further there. I also like to make use of the Tiger Pendant, which is going to to increase the potency of your weapon's physical attacks. And since this weapon is going to be obviously a physical attack based weapon, this is going to further increase your damage. They also like to make use of the twin infant pendant, which is going to increase the stamina recovery speed, which is obviously always very valuable. Overall, the spear is a very powerful weapon. It is a bit on the slower side, but you are going to have very good reach. You can reach enemies from quite far back, and you're going to be able to do a very big amount of damage, especially if you go for a more late game approach for this weapon. When you make use of those 3 benedictions, that is going to benefit you when you do end up learning all of those various disciplines in order to get the most out of that. Overall, this weapon is incredibly good for dealing with mobs, since you are going to be able to one-shot very often most of the smaller enemies in the game. And when it comes to bosses, you're also going to do some very big damage to them as well, but you are going to have to time your attacks. You can't obviously go crazy and spam lots of attack combos, since you are going to be on the slower side of things. So you're going to have to poke and stab and wait for openings in order to get the most out of this weapon when it comes to boss fights. This weapon is also going to very much like to make use of its discipline, so make sure that you are using that. This is not going to be a very spell heavy kind of weapon. You're probably not going to use a lot of spells. You're going to focus on your disciplines when you do end up using this weapon, since the disciplines are going to reward you, since this does have a unique mechanic when it comes to the boldheart stacks, and that is going to obviously combine with skyborn might to allow you to do your bigger attacks at a more frequent rate. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the guide. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comment section below, what is your favorite weapon to use in Wuchang Fallen Feathers? I'd love to find out, and I'll see you guys again next time. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.